Yes, it's so bad, it's good. These are the opening moves of the Viih-Sou. Magnus Carlsen playing it, giving up a rook on move 2. What's going on? The evaluation bar here shifts down by 3 pawns to white. That's like an entire minor piece. It's such an overpowered opening that we had a chess grandmaster get banned for cheating because he kept using it. More details in the description below and linked in the video at the end. Now, does white take the rook here? Well, amazingly, no. Knight f3 was played, refusing the free rook. Now, who's playing white? Well, this is a Polish grandmaster, Marcin Szuszkowski. Probably pronounced that wrong, apologies. He's a top 500 player in the world. This is Titled Tuesday, online chess. And yet when Magnus now goes e6, offering the rook again, it's declined for a second time. I mean, if I hid the names of the players, you would not think these are chess grandmasters, yet alone the world #1 with black. So Magnus goes g6 here to meet this trio of dragons in the centre. Is he preparing to fianchetto the rook? Really go nuts? Well, no. Knight c3. Now he goes with the tried and tested bishop and h4. Marcin's like, anything you can do, I can do better, Magnus. Magnus goes h6. Preparing to meet the pawn push with g5. They'll pass like ships in the night. So instead, e5 played. Not my favourite move. Creating a chink in the phalanx of pawns there. Not necessary. Gives Magnus something to nibble on. And bishop f4, now the best move. Supports the centre, connects the queen and rook. But instead, we see c5. Now, Marcin wants to take the rook off the board, but this is an inferior version. Magnus captures. Yes, his rook drops. He gets the opening theory he was looking for. But after captures here, the queens leave the board, the king's lost its castling rights, and Magnus picks up a pawn. All is not lost and dead. He's got one back. King c2 keeps an eye on d3. Magnus carries on developing. We get bishop f4, very natural. b6, rook hd1, fighting for the only open file. And after bishop b7, rook d2, preparing to double the rooks, Magnus is just in time with knight to e4. He can't challenge the file with his rooks, of course. He's only got one of them. Now, if you capture, you activate the bishop with check. So instead we see rook e2. Magnus now takes here. Don't capture with the king. Magnus would pick up his knight and fork, and then your bishop drops off the board. That would be a check. So instead, b takes on c3. Bishop d5. What a centralized monster. Almost worth a rook. And white has some development problems, because after rook d2, a4 from Magnus, the move you want to play is knight d4, but then your pawn drops to the bishop. And how do you defend it? If g3, your knight drops. If rook d3, bishop e4. If this one goes, then this pawn drops. It's uncomfortable. So that's why knight d4 immediately played. Jettisoning the pawn, but it is a good move because white now activates, c4 on the board, stopping knight d5. Magnus throws in this check here, and after king b2, this is nice. So classic of his amazing style, constantly spotting overloaded pieces, he pushes with g5. Idea being, if you take, pawn recaptures, bishop takes, well, this one crashes through, and how about that for a monster bishop pair? So we didn't see captures. White finds a great move, rook to e1, and the point is, if your bishop retreats, well, now the rook covers this pawn here, and you can start munching on g5, keep e5 protected. So that's why Magnus plays knight to g6. You take me, I take you. This is what we see on the board here. Now we see the knight hop into c6, and it threatens mate in 1, Arabian checkmate. So Magnus castles out a dodge. Now we see h takes on g5. H recaptures, rook d7 invading, and we're seeing the power of the rooks now. They're deadly on open files. King h7, Magnus starting an imperial march. It's like the 9th Star Wars movie in a chess game. I think there's been 8, right? Too many to count, lost track. They kind of got generally more suckier as they went, right? Now King a3, attacking the a pawn, and King g6. Here comes the monarch. We see knight e7 check. Magnus carries on marching. King takes on a4, and the queen side is in crisis. Then these pawns running. Magnus needs counterplay, so he lashes out with pawn to f5. Marching takes en passant. A group of onlookers freaking out. Where did that move come from? Magnus recaptures with the bishop. Knight c6, now backpedaling, opening up this rook as well. And after king g4, on the way into f3, white's just in time to cut the monarch. Good move. Magnus goes rook h8, preparing to activate. It does leave the f-file though. Rook f7, the most powerful move. But missed. We see rook takes on c7, also a great move of course. Rook h2 and g3 check, rook g3 check rather. Again rook f7 stronger. Now the king is forced back, but there's a problem. How are you defending this pawn adequately? If you go f3, well this one's dropping with check. If you go rook f3, then there's g4. It's difficult. So that's why we see knight e7 check. If in doubt, land a check. Magnus chops that one off the board. Rook recaptures, and now the pawn drops here. a3, technically the best move, but instead we see this check. Marching trigger happy on the checks, brings the rook back, and we see this swap of a for b pawn. Magnus defends first, but in marches the monarch. You can't hold on to it. It finally drops. Magnus lands a check. The king moves to the side, and you cannot take these rooks from the board. The c-pawn's then way too fast, way too dangerous. So instead, rook c1, great move. c5 played, e5 from Magnus, he gets his passed pawns running. Rook b5 back, knight e6, heading into the middle of the board here. And after the rook moves away, we can see how Magnus has improved his knight and rook, coordinated them, c6 under control. Meanwhile, his pawn's running. But these rooks do work well together. They start landing checks. Magnus dodges, and this one comes critically under fire. What to do? We see another check. The king goes. Magnus comes back for the pawn. This would start repeating the position, but it's not what we see. An exchange happens, and this is lovely calculation from Magnus, because isn't he just dropping a piece here? Well, wait, it's check. King moves. I clearly messed that up. This is the position I'm in. Now, how are you actually getting out of this one? Your rook's attacked. Your knight's attacked. Well, Magnus finds a great move. Rook to f5. If you take the knight, well then you take here, and this is actually a 1 endgame for black because the king is cut. And if instead of taking here, you take here first, well now you can recapture with the knight. Again, white's doing fine, should be drawn, but black is also. May even have the winning chances with a tricky knight, low on time. So what we saw instead was rook g2. Now Magnus saves his knight. We get some more rook checks, and this is tense. The player's down super low on time, seconds for marching. They do get 1 second back per move. Knight attacked, defended, the checks begin, but slowly and surely Magnus begins to make some progress. Brings his king into the danger zone. He attacks the rook. Yes, it's defended, but not for long when the check comes. So moving the rook, natural, but it should come to b2, let's say. Or e2 is even okay. But what it shouldn't do is come to c2. Look at the evaluation bar. Stockfish pooping its pants. That is a terrible move. Why am I wearing this t-shirt? Don't know if you can see that one. Anyone for a knight fork. Magnus gives the check. The king's in a box, only has 1 square, wanders into d3 here. Anyone for a deadly fork to finish the game. Goodness gracious me. Magnus Carlsen wins again. He chops that one off. He cuts the king. He knows his king and pawn endgames. Sets up a Lucena position. He builds the bridge on the a file. Pawns going through, we see resignation here. Unbelievable stuff by Magnus Carlsen. He's about to make a queen, and that's overwhelming material. I hope you enjoyed, and if you want to see the original game on this title Tuesday, I covered about a week ago, check out the video, link in the description. It's just as incredible.